Welcome, folks. Greg Palast is an investigative journalist. He's out there in Houston, in Atlanta, Georgia right now, reporting on the race between Warnock and Waker. He's reporting about the voter suppression that's occurring, and he also has a new documentary out called, and I've got it right in front of me, called what again?
Vigilante, Georgia's vote suppression hitman. And I should say, by the way, very important, write this down, pull out your pencils, markers, or whatever you use to, or your cells, and put this in. Vigilantemovie.com, vigilantemovie.com. A Texan named Jamie Foxx has paid for it to be available free online for the next 2 days. So it's vigilantemovie.com. And actually, it was interesting because Jamie Foxx, when he saw the vote suppression, the story of vote suppression and racism in the film,
right,
he said, "That's my story from Texas."
There you go.
So if you want to see a Texas story, even though it's labeled Georgia, go to vigilantemovie.com. He's bought you the ticket. You have to bring your own popcorn. It's only about an hour long. It's a short-ish doc.
Well,
but it tells you what the heck is going on here, and it ain't democracy.
You know, I haven't had the time to watch it here, Greg, but I heard you on.
You can do it free now. Hey,
yeah,
you got it.
There you go. I heard you this morning on Tom Hartman, and then I said I better call you up because we need to get this information out today. Anyway, tell me what's going on in Atlanta.
Okay, what's going on in Atlanta and all over this state is that the Republican legislature and the Republican governor, Brian Kemp, do not trust the voters to make the right decision. So instead of democracy, they have, 2 years ago, Reverend Warnock won the Senate seat special election, which is why he's running again now in only 2 years. And he won with a massive mail-in vote and a massive early voting in a runoff 2 years ago, in January of 2021.
Right.
And he won 750,000 votes mailed in, more than 2 to 1. So he picked up almost 500,000 votes, a win in the mail-in vote.
Mm-hmm.
He crushed the in-person voting on early voting, and he slightly lost the on-the-day voting in southern Georgia, where there is, it's a kind of white, kind of redneck red Georgia.
Right.
And but they were shocked because he and John Ossoff, the other Democrat running, swept Georgia. So you had Biden win, you had and 2 Democrats win the Senate. Not like 2 Democrats, but 2 very progressive Democrats, an African American and a Jewish American win.
Right.
This shocked the GOP in Georgia, and frankly, it shocked the Democratic Party because they had nothing to do with it. So it's the voters and the voting rights organizations. So what's going on now? And I'll give you the short on it, which is that because Warnock won the mail-in vote, crushed the mail-in vote, and that's how he got into office, they basically outlawed the mail-in vote. They virtually outlawed early voting. So last year, they had 60 days for the runoff. There were 17 days of early voting. So basically almost 3 weeks of early voting. This time they crushed it to 5
days.
Voting rights groups went in and won a couple more days. So now it's, in some counties it's 7. But they basically went from 17 days to 7 days of early voting. So that means, by the way, you want to vote early. And you have to wait in line for 2 hours because they've basically knocked off most of the early voting, and then they made mail-in voting almost impossible. That increases the lines and the difficulty of voting enormously. Why do I mean that they made mail-in voting and absentee balloting almost impossible? Well, if you only have 28 days, there's just not enough time for the counties to print the ballots, send them out, get them back, and record it in time. And unlike other states, I know in Texas, you basically outlawed mail-in voting, and they saw that, so that's what Georgia imitated. But like in California and most states, if you mail in your ballot, if it's postmarked by Election Day, it gets counted. In Georgia, they have to receive it. So there's just no time.
Right.
And so in the general election, they made it tough to mail in the vote, and the mail-in vote dropped by 83%.
Wow.
And remember, this is the African American and progressive vote. It's the mail-in vote. It dropped by 83% because they made it so difficult. This time, the mail-in vote has been crushed by over 90%.
Wow.
Has been lost. 90% of the mail-in vote is gone. And that again is Warnock's vote. The early voting days were crushed by 2/3. And now, dig this. You can't take, one of the reasons they've stopped mail-in voting is that you used to be able to take your mail-in ballot and put it in a drop box.
Right.
But because you have to have it postmarked by a certain time, they didn't trust the post office, so there's no time literally to mail it back. So you put it in a drop box. They created a law, SB 202, within weeks after Warnock's victory 2 years ago. They created a law, SB 202, passed a law signed by Brian Kemp, the Republican governor, that said that you can't have more drop boxes. You can only have one drop box per 100,000 active voters. 100,000 voters have to share the same ballot drop box. 100,000 active voters. They're not population, active voters. One drop box. So basically, you can't use it.
What's the justification for that?
Boxes, and it only applies, are you ready for this? This only applies to the 4 counties that make up Atlanta. It doesn't apply to those southern counties, which are strong red Republican. So you can't use any drop boxes in Atlanta. And just in case you try to use the drop box, like right now, it's Monday, it's the day before the election. You have your absentee ballot, you filled it out, and you go to put it in the drop box, it ain't there. They said you could only use a drop box during early voting hours, and they moved the drop boxes from outside the buildings, which had cameras and security, to inside, and they're locked away. And they are now locked away for today. So if you have your absentee ballot, you can't put it in a drop box.
Now, isn't that illegal? Isn't that unconstitutional if they have special laws for certain areas in the county?
Oh, yeah. Well, what they where is the Justice Department? Oh, the Justice Department said that's not nice, and they're in a general court. But we have, if you go to gregpalast.com, you'll see a complaint written to the Justice Department, which was launched by Black Gwinnett magazine. Gwinnett is the big suburban county of Atlanta, which is in the majority non-white now. And they've put in a complaint, and you see it at gregpalast.com, which says, please, Justice Department, make them unlock the drop boxes. I mean, they're literally saying it's just like having black drinking fountains. The black drop boxes are locked away, literally.
Greg,
they'll be locked away tomorrow on Election Day. Greg,
that is a shame. Look, I'm up on time right now, so what I want to ask you to do for me, Greg, is do 2 things in a minute. First, tell us what you think is going to be the outcome. But secondly, how do we solve this problem for 24? All in 1 minute.
Okay, no one can tell what will happen. If it weren't for Jim Crow, Warnock wouldn't even be in a runoff. He'd have already been reelected. But no one can tell the effect of these Jim Crow tactics. So it's up in the air. That's one. Number 2, how do we stop it? We don't let our guard down. We fight 2 things. I want you to go to gregpalast.com. There's that complaint. Add your name to the complaint. It's everyone's U.S. Senate is at stake in that election tomorrow. You have a right to complain when Jim Crow tactics are determining the election, not the voters. So go to gregpalast.com, add your name, stay informed. And then I'm just asking you to watch a movie. How difficult is that? Go to vigilantemovie.com. And I guarantee there's lots of crazy laughs in there, and there's a lot of brutal stuff in there, too. And you get it all. Just bring your popcorn. Jamie Foxx, your Texan, has paid for this movie to be free for you. So go to vigilantemovie.com. You get a link. You put in your email address. They send you a link. You can get the movie, watch it online. And I guarantee you'll enjoy the movie.
Well,
horrified, you'll be informed.
Greg Palast, investigative reporter, now in Georgia, handling that difficult election. Thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right. As usual, Greg, you are always informative and give us a whole lot of hope, brother.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful day. We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.